The ocean is home to countless species, including the formidable shark. It's a place of beauty and untamed wilderness. Sharks, as apex predators, play a key role in marine ecosystems, inspiring both awe and caution. While shark attacks are rare, they serve as a reminder of the delicate balance between nature and humanity. Beneath the waves lies a complex web of life, from graceful marine creatures to vibrant coral reefs. Exploring it requires an appreciation of its wonders and a respect for its risks, highlighting the importance of harmony between people and marine life. Here are 6 stories. Under the bright afternoon sun on October 6, 2024, the Pacific Ocean stretched serenely and endlessly into the horizon. Kiribati, a remote island nation in the Central Pacific, is known for its stunning and secluded waters. This region, far from busy shipping lanes, is often described as peaceful, yet unexpectedly untamed. Beneath the turquoise surface, predators thrived, their movements hidden from the unsuspecting tourists. In this remote corner of the world, the Volkov family, esteemed members of Russia's theatrical elite, sought a much-needed escape from their demanding lives. They were far from ordinary. Anatoly Volkov, the 48-year-old patriarch, was a celebrated playwright, highly respected in Moscow's artistic circles. His wife, Ekaterina, 44, was a renowned actress known for her acclaimed stage performances. Their children, 15-year-old Mikhail and 12-year-old Alina, had inherited their parents' talent and were already making their mark in the theater world. Sofia Volkov, the 73-year-old matriarch of the family, was a retired director who had shaped Russian theater for decades. Together, they formed a creative and influential dynasty. Seeking inspiration and seclusion, they booked a week-long Pacific cruise aboard the luxurious Silver Horizon yacht. The Silver Horizon was an 80-foot vessel equipped with every comfort imaginable, designed for leisure rather than endurance. The mood was relaxed as the family sailed across the vast ocean. Ekaterina lounged on the deck, Anatoly worked on ideas for a new play, and the kids played in the small onboard pool. Meanwhile, the ever-practical Sofia sat indoors reading a book on maritime safety, a choice that would later feel tragically ironic. Late in the afternoon, as the yacht entered a particularly remote and deep section of the Pacific, the trouble began. The water here was unnervingly still, colder and darker. Just as Anatoly remarked on the eerie silence, the first impact struck. An 18-foot great white shark suddenly rammed violently into the side of the yacht. The impact sent a violent shudder through the yacht, knocking Ekaterina's drink off the table and toppling Mikhail into the pool. The family froze in shock, unsure of what had just happened. Captain Jonas Vierhoff, a seasoned seaman hired to helm the yacht, rushed to the deck. What he saw left him momentarily speechless. The massive dorsal fin of a great white shark cutting through the water. The shark circled the yacht with unsettling purpose, its movements agitated. Moments later it struck again, slamming its enormous body into the hull with even greater force. Water surged into the yacht's lower compartments as the metallic groan of breaking fiberglass echoed through the air. Panic set in. Jonas shouted for everyone to prepare the lifeboats, but the Silver Horizon was sinking faster than anyone anticipated, with severe damage already done. Chaos took over as the family scrambled to gather supplies and life jackets. Sofia, moving more slowly due to her age, struggled to steady herself as the yacht tilted dangerously. Meanwhile, the shark continued its relentless assault, ramming the yacht with terrifying precision. As the family fought to deploy the lifeboats, disaster struck. The shark's massive jaws snapped shut on the yacht's edge as it broke the surface. In the chaos, Sofia lost her balance and fell into the water. Before anyone could react, the shark lunged at her. Bright red blood stained the water as its teeth sank into her leg, causing her to scream in agony. Jonas moved quickly to pull Sofia back onto the sinking yacht. She was losing blood fast and her leg was severely mangled. It was clear the yacht wouldn't stay afloat much longer, listing heavily to one side. While Jonas managed to inflate one lifeboat, it was far too small to fit all 6 of them. The family had no choice but to cling to whatever debris they could find as the Silver Horizon disappeared beneath the waves. Ekaterina held onto a floating chair, while Anatoly gripped a piece of the yacht's railing. Alina and Mikhail, both terrified but resourceful, shared a fragment of the broken hull. But the shark wasn't finished. Its fin cut through the water like a knife as it circled the survivors, occasionally approaching with its massive body just beneath the surface. The family held onto their makeshift rafts, praying the predator would lose interest. Hours passed, and as the sun sank below the horizon, they were left in darkness. Sophia's condition worsened as the cold Pacific water chilled them to the bone. She was weak and pale, and her breathing became labored. Just when all hope seemed lost, a faint glimmer of light appeared in the distance. Kaleo Tanoa, a Kiribati native and captain of the Ocean's Respite, a fishing vessel, spotted the debris and heard the faint cries for help as he returned from a day of fishing. He carefully navigated his boat toward them and pulled the Volkovs aboard, one by one. Despite being nearby, the shark did not attack the larger vessel. Once on board the Ocean's Respite, the Volkovs received medical attention for their injuries. Kaleo provided the family with water and warm blankets and fashioned a makeshift bandage for Sophia's leg. Despite their shock, Anatoly expressed his gratitude and promised to share Kaleo's bravery with the world. After being taken to a hospital in Tarawa, Kiribati's capital, Sophia underwent emergency surgery to save her leg. The incident quickly made headlines worldwide. The dramatic details of the attack and the family's harrowing escape captured the attention of news outlets. Experts suggested that the shark's behavior was likely the result of territorial aggression, triggered by the yacht's intrusion into its hunting grounds. However, the Volkovs were more focused on recovering from the trauma than understanding the reasons behind the attack. In the following months, the family returned to Russia, their experience having left them deeply changed. Anatoly's play Beneath the Waves, inspired by the ordeal, became an immediate success. Once known for her grace, Ekaterina gained a new perspective on the fragility of life. Though Mikhail and Alina still had nightmares about sharks, their shared survival brought them closer as siblings. Ever practical, Sophia insisted on returning to the theater despite using a cane to walk, and refused to let her injury define her. The Pacific Ocean's waters, hiding both beauty and danger, remained as mysterious and perilous as ever. That day would always serve as a sobering reminder to the Volkovs of nature's strength and unpredictability. On May 15, 2024, Miami Beach, with its pristine white sands and glistening waters, was packed with both locals and visitors soaking up the Florida sun. Stretching for miles along the Atlantic coast, the beach, a favorite for surfers and swimmers, was lined with the famous pastel Art Deco buildings of Ocean Drive. Though Miami Beach had been a popular destination for vacationers since the early 1900s, threats were lurking beneath the waves. That day, the beach would face one of its scariest encounters. Sarah Williams, 27, a seasoned lifeguard with 5 years of experience, was stationed in her usual spot atop the raised lifeguard tower near 12th Street. Known for her sharp intuition and calm demeanor under pressure, Sarah had witnessed her fair share of chaotic beach days. But nothing in her past could have prepared her for what was about to unfold. It was a surprisingly calm early afternoon. Aside from the occasional ripple from a passing jet ski, the waters were still, reflecting the clear blue sky above. Children built sandcastles near the shore, while tourists relaxed on inflatable tubes. On that day, James Thompson, a 34-year-old schoolteacher from Chicago, was vacationing with friends and enjoying the ocean. A skilled swimmer, James had ventured just beyond the approved swim zone, about 100 yards out, where the water was calmer, darker, and deeper. Ideal for solitude, but also riskier. Sarah noticed something unusual that afternoon. Near James, a group of fish began to dart wildly, their silvery scales flashing in the sunlight as they swam in frantic patterns. Squinting, she scanned the water with her trained eyes. That's when she saw it, a shadowy figure moving beneath the surface with eerie grace. Her stomach clenched. The size and movement of the animal ruled out a harmless dolphin. It was a bull shark, known for its violent nature and tendency to swim in shallow coastal waters. Before Sarah could warn anyone with her megaphone, the attack began. The shark's powerful jaws clamped down on James's right leg, striking with terrifying speed. In an instant, he was yanked under the water, creating a whirlpool of foam and blood. Swimmers nearby screamed and scrambled to paddle back toward the shore. Heart pounding, Sarah grabbed her whistle and blew a sharp blast. ordering everyone out of the water immediately. With urgency in her voice, she reached for her radio and called for emergency backup. Her eyes locked on the spot where James had been pulled under, and she reported the potential shark attack, 100 yards out, and a distressed swimmer. Though fear gripped her, Sarah knew she couldn't wait for help to arrive. Grabbing her rescue board, she ran toward the water. As she prepared to jump in, she spotted a young man and woman on paddleboards nearby. With a pointed gesture toward James, she yelled directions to them. After a brief pause, the two paddleboarders headed toward the disturbance. Meanwhile, James resurfaced, screaming in pain and gasping for air. For a moment, the shark released him and circled, seemingly deciding whether to attack again. His leg was covered in blood, turning the water a deep scarlet. James tried to swim toward shore, but with his injured leg, it was nearly impossible. The two paddleboarders reached him first. The young man, later identified as Axel Moreno, 22, grabbed James's arm and leaned over his board to help. To try and scare the shark away, the woman, Clara Voss, 25, splashed at the water wildly with her paddle. Sarah skimmed across the waves on her rescue board and arrived seconds later. She quickly assessed James's condition. His leg was severed, with bone exposed through deep gashes. The shark, its dorsal fin slicing dangerously close to the water surface, made another pass. With her heart racing, Sarah focused and positioned herself between James and the predator. Axel and Sarah managed to lift James onto her rescue board, though his weight caused it to wobble dangerously. Clara's frantic splashing was enough to momentarily drive the shark away. Sarah began the difficult task of bringing James back to shore with help from the paddleboarders. Every moment felt like an eternity. James was slipping in and out of consciousness, his face pale from blood loss. Sarah shouted at him to stay awake, though she wasn't sure he could hear her. A crowd had gathered on the shore, their faces a mix of curiosity and horror, as they neared the shallows. Two off-duty paramedics who had been sunbathing nearby rushed forward to help. They ripped off their shirts to use as makeshift tourniquets, tying them tightly around James's leg to control the bleeding. Sarah stepped back for a moment, catching her breath while watching the paramedics work. Despite her hands shaking, she maintained her composure. Within minutes, sirens blared as emergency medical technicians arrived and loaded James onto a stretcher. An ambulance pulled onto the sand, and Sarah provided the paramedics with a brief update on the situation and the steps she had taken to stabilize James. James was rushed to Jackson Memorial Hospital, where doctors performed emergency surgery. They saved his life, but his leg could not be saved. The damage from the shark's bite was too severe, and his right leg was amputated below the knee. The beach community was abuzz with rumors in the days that followed. Some swimmers were too shaken to return to the water, while others dismissed it as a rare but inherent risk of ocean swimming. Sarah, however, couldn't shake the image of the shark's dark shadow or the sound of James's screams. She replayed the incident in her mind, wondering if she could have done more, despite everyone assuring her that her actions had been heroic. James's life was forever changed, but he eventually recovered. The road to adjusting to life with a prosthetic leg and months of physical therapy was difficult, but his remarkable optimism never wavered. In interviews, he referred to Sarah and the paddleboarders as his guardian angels and credited them with saving his life. Sarah's reputation as one of Miami Beach's most dedicated and courageous lifeguards was solidified by the incident. Yet it also served as a sobering reminder of the unpredictable threats beneath the ocean's surface. A week after the attack, she returned to work, determined not to let fear control her actions. However, she couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that gripped her when she looked out over the water and saw a shadow beneath the waves. The Reyes family set out on their eagerly awaited journey to the Great Barrier Reef in July 2024. Lionel Reyes, his wife Amara, and their 4 children, 9-year-old Mateo and 12-year-old Sienna, had always been drawn to the sea. Living in Brisbane, Australia, they often explored the nearby beaches on weekends. But this trip was different. They had never visited the famous reef, a vibrant underwater world stretching over 2,300 kilometers along Australia's northeastern coast. A UNESCO World Heritage Site, the Great Barrier Reef was home to thousands of marine species, both magnificent and delicate. Looking forward to a memorable day in the pristine waters off Cairns, the family booked a tour with Coral Horizons, a local snorkeling company. With a guide and 2 crew members on board, they climbed onto the small charter boat, Nautilus Voyager, filled with excitement. Before setting off, the guide, a cheerful man named Jasper, gave them a safety briefing. He emphasized the importance of protecting the environment and praised the reef's beauty. While he mentioned some potential threats, such as jellyfish and strong currents, sharks were barely touched upon, given how rare attacks were. Though he listened carefully to the briefing, Lionel, naturally cautious, couldn't shake a sense of unease. The sun was high, casting shimmering patterns on the water's surface as the boat reached a remote reef patch. The brilliant blue of the ocean stretched endlessly in every direction, broken only by the occasional shadow of coral. After a brief pause, Lionel followed his wife and children into the water as they donned their snorkeling gear. For the first hour, the experience was everything they had dreamed of. Schools of fish swam all around them, their scales glinting in the sunlight like microscopic rainbows. Mateo swam clumsily after a clownfish, laughing as it darted into a patch of anemones, while Sienna squealed through her snorkel when she spotted a sea turtle gliding gracefully beneath her. While Lionel kept a watchful eye on the boat in the distance, Amara stayed close to the kids, snapping photos with her underwater camera. But the tranquility was abruptly interrupted. Lionel was the first to notice something was wrong. The playful schools of fish scattered, as though the water had suddenly grown heavier. He glanced over just in time to see a shadowy figure rising from the deeper water, a tiger shark over 4 meters long, swimming straight toward them. The boat crew also spotted it. Jasper shouted from the deck, waving his arms to signal for the family to come back. Lionel urgently motioned for Amara and the kids to swim toward the boat, causing panic. With Amara close behind, Sienna and Mateo, bewildered but compliant, started paddling toward safety. But Lionel stayed behind, instinctively positioning himself between his family and the predator. The shark closed the distance with terrifying speed, its powerful tail propelling it forward in smooth, undulating movements. Lionel had read about tiger sharks, curious creatures with indiscriminate diets, known to attack almost anything they deemed prey. But nothing could have prepared him for the sheer size and presence of the animal now bearing down on them. In the chaos, Amara grabbed Mateo's arm, pushing him toward the boat, while Sienna, just a few meters ahead, flailed her small arms, swimming as fast as she could. Lionel shouted at them to keep going, though his voice was lost beneath the water and the mounting terror of the moment. The shark struck with brutal efficiency, lunging at Lionel and clamping down on his left arm with a force that sent shockwaves through his body. The pain was instant and overwhelming, but adrenaline drove him to fight. He thrashed against the predator, kicking at its snout in a desperate attempt to free himself. For a moment it seemed to work. The shark released him, but only to circle back for another attack. Amara reached the boat with the children, shoving them up onto the ladder as the crew scrambled to pull them aboard. She looked back to see Lionel struggling in the water, his surroundings hazy with blood. The scene was unreal, nearly incomprehensible. When she screamed for help, the crew had already thrown a life ring toward him, one of them shouting into a radio for assistance. As the shark attacked again, Lionel, weak and confused, was able to grab the life ring. But the shark latched onto his leg and dragged him beneath the water. Amara, watching in horror, gripped the railing, her knuckles white. Jasper and another crew member plunged into the water with poles, hitting the shark until it finally let go. The men managed to drag Lionel back onto the boat, but his injuries were severe. Blood poured from the wounds on his arm and leg, quickly collecting on the deck. Lionel's breathing was shallow and labored, his face pale. Amara knelt beside him, desperately trying to stop the bleeding with her trembling hands, pressing them against his largest wound. Mateo and Sienna huddled together, their faces buried in each other's shoulders as they sobbed. Paramedics were waiting when the Nautilus Voyager reached shore, but it was too late. Just minutes before they docked, Lionel passed away from his wounds. Although the Reyes family believed the ocean had betrayed them, the official cause of death was blood loss from the shark attack. The tragedy garnered international attention in the weeks that followed, reigniting discussions about shark conservation and safety. Experts stressed that such attacks were rare and often the result of misidentification. But the Reyes family found little comfort in those statistics. Amara, once an avid swimmer, could no longer bring herself to enter the ocean. The sight of its vast expanse had become a cruel reminder of what she had lost. Sienna and Mateo, who had once eagerly begged for trips to the beach, now avoided even backyard pools. Their youthful innocence had been replaced by a lingering fear. Lionel's death left an irreplaceable void. He had died protecting his family, an act of bravery that both haunted and comforted them. The Great Barrier Reef, once a symbol of life and wonder, had become a place of tragedy, its beauty forever overshadowed by their loss. As time passed, the Reyes family found ways to cope, though the scars, both physical and emotional, remained. They planted a tree in Lionel's memory at a local park, a quiet tribute to the man who had given everything for the people he loved. But the ocean, with all its mysteries and dangers, would never again be the source of joy it once was. June 10, 2024 was an unseasonably warm day off the coast of Cape Cod, Massachusetts. The waters of the North Atlantic were calm, reflecting the clear blue sky above as seasoned fisherman John Davis set out alone. His boat, a modest but reliable 22-foot vessel named Sea Warden, had accompanied him on countless fishing trips over the years. John, 57, had spent most of his life on these waters, providing for his family and the small community of Chatham. Situated on the southeastern tip of Cape Cod, the town was renowned for its rich maritime heritage and surrounded by the vast, unpredictable ocean. The Cape Cod area had long been a hotspot for great white shark sightings, particularly in the summer months. The region's thriving seal population, a favorite prey of the sharks, often drew these apex predators close to shore. Over the years, local fishermen had learned to coexist with these creatures, respecting their power but rarely fearing direct encounters. John was no stranger to the occasional fin slicing through the surface or a sudden shadow passing beneath his boat. Still, with decades of experience, nothing could have prepared him for what would unfold that fateful day. Early that morning, John had set out with the goal of catching bluefish and striped bass in the deeper waters. About 5 miles off Monomoy Island, a strip of land known for its hazy currents and shifting sandbars, the Sea Warden was anchored. John was hauling in his nets around noon when an odd incident occurred. The boat lurched violently to one side, nearly throwing him off balance. At first, he thought it was a submerged log or debris. But as he steadied himself, a massive shadow appeared beneath the surface, circling the boat with slow, deliberate movements. For a brief moment, the creature's pale underside and distinctive dorsal fin were visible. According to John, the shark was a great white, at least 15 feet in length. Though he had seen sharks before, this one seemed bolder and more aggressive. With terrifying force, the shark began slamming into the Sea Warden's hull, rocking the vessel dangerously. John soon realized this wasn't a curious prod or a territorial display. Each impact sent violent tremors through the boat. It was an attack. As the shark circled back, it struck again, this time with enough force to crack the fiberglass hull. Water began seeping into the boat. With trembling hands, John scrambled to the cockpit and tried to radio for help. The message barely reached the Coast Guard station in Chatham, just a few miles away. He managed to send a jumbled distress signal before the shark attacked again, this time biting into the side of the boat. Water poured in through the jagged hole left by the great white's teeth, puncturing the hull. In a desperate attempt to stop the flooding, John grabbed a bucket, but it was futile. Unfazed, the shark continued its assault, its massive jaws snapping inches from the deck as it lunged out of the water. In the chaos, John slipped and cut his leg on a piece of broken metal. Blood began pooling around him, mixing with the seawater flooding the deck. The shark seemed to sense the blood, becoming even more aggressive. It struck again, sending the boat rocking and causing John to lose his balance. Crawling back to the cockpit, he tried to start the engine. Despite the motor sputtering to life, the hull damage rendered the boat sluggish and unresponsive. John's options were running out as the Sea Warden slowly sank. With growing fear and pain, he attempted to steer the boat toward the shore, knowing time was running out. Struggling to stay conscious, John was losing blood quickly and his vision was fading. The shark, relentless in its pursuit, made one final lap before disappearing into the ocean. For a moment, there was silence, broken only by the sound of water pouring into the sinking boat. When the Coast Guard finally responded to John's faint distress call, they found the sea warden half submerged, with John slumped over the controls, unresponsive. The paramedics who arrived aboard the rescue vessel attempted to resuscitate him, but it was too late. John had passed away from his injuries before help could reach him. News of his death spread quickly throughout Chatham's close-knit community after the Coast Guard towed the wreckage back to shore. The town was shaken by the tragedy. John Davis, a well-liked and respected figure known for his kindness and strong connection to the sea, was gone. His death prompted discussions about the rising number of great white sharks off Cape Cod's coastline, marking the first fatal shark attack in the region in more than 80 years. Some pointed to rising ocean temperatures, while others cited the increasing seal population as a potential factor. Regardless of the cause, the tragedy served as a stark reminder of the unpredictable and dangerous nature of the ocean. John's family held a memorial service a week later, attended by hundreds of mourners. His two grown children, Marcus and Abigail, along with his wife, Eleanor Davis, shared stories of his devotion to his family and his love for the sea. A broken relic, the sea warden was put on display at the town's Maritime Museum as a solemn reminder of a life taken too soon. Local fishermen continued their work in the months that followed, but a shadow lingered over Cape Cod's waters. What was once a place of comfort and connection had become a source of anxiety. For those who knew John, the sight of a dorsal fin cutting through the waves would forever be a haunting reminder of the dangers lurking beneath. Travelers seeking peace and adventure have long found refuge in the Maldives, a tropical paradise in the Indian Ocean known for its turquoise waters. Nestled between the Laccadive Sea and the Indian subcontinent, this archipelago boasts pristine coral reefs and crystal-clear lagoons. On the morning of March 12, 2024, however, the waters of the southern atoll of Gafu Dalu shifted from serene to terrifying. David Turner, a 34-year-old advertising executive from London, had arrived in the Maldives for a much-needed escape from the hustle of city life. Staying at the luxurious Divehi Horizons Resort, he had already spent 3 days marveling at the vibrant marine life. On the 4th day of his vacation, David joined a small group of snorkelers for a guided tour of the reefs near Fersmathada Island, known for its rich fish populations and occasional sightings of larger marine predators. Their guide, a seasoned local diver named Hassan Riaz, led the group to a remote reef about 2 kilometers offshore. The sun blazed overhead, and the sea appeared calm, its surface shimmering like liquid glass. The group consisted of 6 snorkelers, including David, who had donned his gear and slipped into the warm, inviting water. Beneath the surface, the reef was alive with color and movement. Schools of parrotfish darted between coral formations while sea turtles glided lazily past. David, captivated by the beauty of the underwater world, floated slightly away from the group, mesmerized by the sight of a lionfish weaving through the coral below. He failed to notice how far he had drifted. Unknown to David, lurking in the deeper waters beyond the reef was an oceanic white-tip shark. While not the largest of sharks, this species is known for its bold and opportunistic nature. The Maldives had seen few shark attacks in recent years, but the growing number of tourists venturing into the water had increased the likelihood of such encounters. As David floated on the surface, adjusting his snorkel, the shark moved closer. Its movements were barely perceptible against the blue expanse. The first sign of danger came when David felt an excruciating pain in his left shoulder. In a single heartbeat, the shark struck, its powerful jaws clamping down with terrifying force. The impact dragged him underwater, and for a moment everything around him was a blur of bubbles and chaos. Panic surged through David's body, but survival instinct kicked in. Thrashing wildly, he recalled something he had once read about sharks. Their snouts and gills were sensitive areas. Summoning every ounce of strength, he drove his fist into the shark's snout. The blow wasn't strong, but it startled the predator enough for it to loosen its grip. With a desperate kick, David broke free and shot to the surface, gasping for air. Nearby, Hassan Riaz had been keeping an eye on the group and immediately noticed the commotion. Without hesitation, he called out to his assistant, Noor Ahmed, who was manning the boat. Hassan grabbed a spear used for guiding tours and dove into the water. David, blood streaming from his shoulder, was struggling to stay afloat. The shark circled briefly but did not attack again, perhaps deterred by the sudden activity and yelling from the boat. Hassan reached David in seconds, pulling him toward the boat as Noor maneuvered it closer. The other snorkelers, now aware of the danger, clambered aboard, their faces pale with shock. David was lifted onto the deck by Hassan and Noor, their strength fueled by urgency. His shoulder was in terrible condition. Blood quickly pooled beneath him, and deep gashes extended from his collarbone to his upper arm. As Hassan radioed the resort for assistance, Noor promptly retrieved a first aid kit and applied pressure to the wound. A larger rescue boat with medical personnel arrived within minutes. Doctors worked through the night to stabilize David before he was taken to the nearest hospital on Thinadoo Island. The attack seriously injured David. Though surgeons were able to repair the torn muscle and tissue with several surgeries, the physical scars would remain permanently. The psychological impact was equally profound. For weeks, David struggled with nightmares, the moment of the shark strike replaying over and over in his mind. Back in London, David sought therapy to cope with his trauma. Although the memories of that day haunted him, he tried to find humor in the absurdity of punching a shark and surviving to tell the tale. He often joked with his friends, saying the shark must have thought he tasted terrible. The incident garnered widespread attention, with media outlets covering the story and raising awareness about safety measures for snorkelers and divers. In response, the Maldives government, working alongside local tour operators, implemented stricter guidelines for reef excursions. These included mandatory shark awareness briefings and the presence of safety equipment on all tours. Though forever changed by the experience, David gained a new appreciation for life. He remained an advocate for marine conservation, understanding that sharks, despite their fearsome reputation, play a crucial role in maintaining the balance of the ocean's ecosystem. Still, whenever he looked at the scars on his shoulder, he felt a deep sense of gratitude for the quick-thinking guides who saved his life, for the resilience that helped him fight back, and for the second chance he had been given. The waters off the Maldives returned to their tranquil state. But for those who heard David Turner's story, they served as a reminder of the unpredictable beauty and danger of the natural world. The waters off Cape Agulhas, South Africa, the southernmost tip of the African continent, were calm and serene as the morning of August 20th, 2024, broke. A popular spot for adventurers due to its unpredictable currents and rich marine life, it drew those seeking both challenge and tranquility. Thomas Bell, a 34-year-old kayaking enthusiast from Cape Town, had come to enjoy the peace of the sea and escape the hustle and bustle of the city. Having kayaked along many of South Africa's rocky coasts, Thomas was no stranger to the sport. He had chosen this particular route for its scenic views and the opportunity to spot dolphins, seals, and perhaps even an occasional shark, though he had always hoped to observe one from a safe distance. By mid-morning, Thomas had paddled a few miles offshore. The gentle splash of his paddle was the only sound that broke the stillness. The ocean was calm, with occasional fish shimmering beneath the surface, giving the illusion of serenity. That peace shattered when, halfway through his trip, a sudden force struck the side of his kayak, nearly capsizing it. The force of the impact flung Thomas into the water, disoriented and struggling to breathe. As he fought to regain his bearings, he saw the unmistakable dorsal fin of a great white shark slicing through the water. The shark, about 5 meters long, circled him briefly before charging again. When Thomas attempted to climb back into his kayak, the predator's speed was too much. With a snap of its powerful jaws, it clamped down on his right leg and charged forward. The pain was instant and excruciating, sending waves of panic through his body. Flailing and bleeding, Thomas screamed for help, his voice cutting through the water. Nearby, Adrian and Marcus van der Hoven, a father and son team on a fishing boat, heard his cries. Recognizing the danger immediately, they began maneuvering their boat toward him. Meanwhile, Thomas struggled to stay afloat. The shark briefly released its grip, only to circle back, its movement slow but deliberate. Blood smeared across the water, a grim reminder of how vulnerable Thomas was. Thomas tried to fend off the shark by using his paddle as a makeshift barrier, relying on his survival instincts. Adrian threw a rope at him as the Van der Hovens neared. Marcus pounded an oar against the boat's side, attempting to distract the predator. The The shark veered away long enough for Thomas to grab the rope and be hauled aboard, proving the tactic successful. However, his leg was severely damaged. The shark's bite had torn through muscle and bone, leaving a mangled wound that required immediate medical attention. As they rushed back to shore, Adrian applied a tourniquet to stop the bleeding. Thomas drifted in and out of consciousness during the agonizing trip to the dock, which seemed to stretch on forever. An ambulance was waiting to rush him to Tygerberg Hospital in Cape Town. Surgeons worked tirelessly to stabilize him, but the severity of the injury left them with no choice but to amputate his right leg below the knee. Thomas's recovery was physically and emotionally challenging. Weeks of pain, physical therapy, and processing the trauma of the attack tested his resilience. Despite the odds, Thomas refused to let the experience define him negatively. He began to see the event as a testament to his survival and a reminder of the fragility of life in the face of nature's power. Months later, Thomas was back on the water, now using a custom-made prosthetic leg designed for kayaking. He found comfort in the activity that had once brought him so close to death. He also became an advocate for shark conservation, partnering with marine researchers to raise awareness about the importance of protecting these apex predators and their habitats. The attack on Thomas gained significant attention and sparked conversations about kayaker safety and the need to preserve marine environments. The experience reminded Thomas of the ocean's unpredictable beauty and danger, which he still cherished despite its risks. Ultimately, Thomas's story was one of perseverance, adaptation, and a deep bond with the sea, beyond just survival. His bravery served as a reminder that living in harmony with nature often requires overcoming obstacles as vast as the ocean itself, opening people's eyes to both the strength and fragility of the natural world.